The Contra Dam loomed out of the grey Swiss morning like a concrete tomb, a towering curved wall of weathered concrete, holding back millions of tons of freezing water. On top of that narrow ledge, a lone figure broke into a steady rhythmic sprint. Draped in matte black tactical gear that swallowed the weak winter light, he moved with a fluid, lethal purpose. Every stride was calculated, his boots gripping the cold, damp asphalt as fast as he could. He didn't check the drop. For a 00 agent, gravity isn't a threat to be feared, it's just another tool to be weaponized. He reached the center of the massive structure. Without a moment's hesitation, he hooked the heavy steel carabiner of the bungee cord to the structural railing. The wind whipped violently against his face, carrying the bitter scent of ozone and pine, but his hams remained perfectly steady. He stepped up onto the lip of the abyss, looking down at the sheer, terrifying vertical geometry of the dam wall fading into the misty depths below. With his arms opened, he just jumped. No hesitation. It was a silent, breathless dive, a stone falling through a frozen sky. The concrete wall blurred past his eyes in a dizzying streak of grey, the rushing air roaring in his ears as momentum took him deeper into Soviet territory. The descent ended in the damp industrial bowels of the facility. With practiced precision, he swung gently toward a narrow, rusted ventilation hatch built into the sheer face of the rock. Pulling a compact, high-intensity laser cutter from his tactical vest, he ignited the beam. A brilliant, sparking crimson light cut through the freezing gloom, hissing loudly as the plasma blade sliced cleanly through the heavy iron seals of the grate. The heavy iron grate gave way with a dull metallic thud, disappearing into the blackness of the airshaft. He hauled himself inside, the confined space smelling of stagnant air, industrial grease, and old dust. He moved through the darkness like a shadow, knees and elbows scraping against the cold sheet metal, navigating the labyrinths by pure muscle memory, and the blueprints burned into his mind. Below him, a rhythmic flickering of fluorescent light spilled through a ceiling vent. He peered down into a concrete bathroom stall. A lone Soviet soldier stood by the sinks, entirely unaware of the ceiling breathing above him. There was no hesitation, no cinematic flourish. He dropped straight through the ceiling grid. The impact was sudden and brutal. Before the soldier could even register the shattering tiles, a gloved hand clamped tightly over his mouth, cutting off his scream, while a precise, violent strike to the carotid artery sent him limp against the tile floor. He concealed the unconscious body into the shadows of the stall. He adjusted his black tactical vest with unhurried efficiency before opening the bathroom's door. He stepped out into the main corridor. The facility was an oppressive maze of exposed pipes and low-hanging steam. He kept low, blending into the deep shadows of the industrial architecture, pausing as a pair of armed guards patrolled past the end of the hallway. His eyes tracked their movement, calculating the seconds until they cleared the perimeter. Once the hallway fell silent, he moved. He slipped down a side stairwell, arriving at the heavy reinforced door of the main bottling room. He pushed it open, stepping into the dark, echoing chamber. From the gloom behind the door, the cold steel of a Makarov pistol pressed firmly against the back of his neck. A low, gravelly voice cut through the silence, speaking sharp, demanding Russian. He didn't freeze. His expression remained utterly unreadable. "I'm alone," he responded calmly in English. The pressure of the barrel vanished. A familiar, dark chuckle echoed from the shadows as the figure stepped into the light, lowering the weapon. Alec Trevelyan. His face bore a grim, confident smirk. "Aren't we all, James?" Trevelyan replied. "Ready to save the world again?" Alec asked, the faint light catching the dangerous edge of his smile. "After you, 006, James responded. Trevelyan turned toward the exit, checking his weapon. "For England, James. For England, Alec." They slipped out of the bottling room like twin ghosts, navigating the concrete labyrinth with practiced, lethal synchronization. When a lone scientist stepped into the corridor ahead, Trevelyan didn't hesitate. A single silenced round dropped the man instantly, clearing their path. James stepped over the body, pulling a compact digital gadget from his vest and pressing it against the electronic lock of the main laboratory doors. The device hummed, the circuitry bypassed, and the heavy doors slid open with a soft hiss. They moved quickly into the primary tank room, a massive, echoing chamber dominated by towering cylindrical vats of chemical weapons. James scanned the perimeter, his eyes darting across the catwalks. It was entirely empty. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating. "Too easy," James muttered, his instincts flaring. Trevelyan moved toward the nearest console, countering that half of everything was luck. Before the words could fully settle, the luck ran out. A deafening siren shattered the silence, bathing the concrete and steel in a rotating, frantic crimson light. "Set the charges," Alex shouted over the noise, rushing toward the perimeter to cover the main entrance. 6 minutes, James. James sprinted to the base of the massive chemical tank, his hands moving with mechanical precision as he pulled the blocks of plastic explosive from his pack. Behind him, the room erupted into chaos. The heavy iron doors buckled, and a barrage of automatic gunfire tore through the air, bullets pinging violently off the steel vats and showering the floor in sparks. Through the haze of smoke and flashing alarms, James kept his focus locked on the digital timers, priming the detonators, while the sounds of the firefight echoed across the chamber. He reached for the final charge, just as a heavy command echoed over the gunfire, ordering a ceasefire in sharp, authoritative Russian. James glanced through the gap in the industrial crates, his blood turning to ice. The smoke cleared to reveal Colonel Aramov, surrounded by a wall of green uniforms with rifles raised. On the concrete floor below him, Alec Trevelyan was swarmed, forced to his knees, with the cold steel of a pistol pressed firmly against his forehead. "Finish the job, James. For England." Trevelyan's voice cut through the blaring sirens. Aramov didn't hesitate. The Makarov pistol barked once, a sharp crack that echoed off the concrete. Alec went limp, and the world got a little colder. James buried the grief under a layer of ice. He reached down and slammed the final detonator into place, punching the digital override to slash the countdown from 6 minutes to 3. "Hold your fire!" Aramov roared to his soldiers, realizing the catastrophic stakes. But the hesitation was all James needed. He lunged backward, grabbing the heavy steel handle of a rolling chemical cart. With a burst of adrenaline, he shoved the massive steel barrier directly into the line of soldiers, scattering the front rank and drawing a hail of frantic, disorganized gunfire. He dove onto a moving industrial conveyor belt that sliced through the rear wall of the facility. The heavy rubber track carried him at high speed through a dark, roaring machinery tunnel before spitting him violently out into the blinding white glare of the mountain air. The lush dam was gone. Ahead, a light twin-engine plane was barely moving down the icy runway, prepping for takeoff. James sprinted through the snow, threw himself into the cockpit, and wrestled with the pilot. In the frantic struggle, a Soviet soldier on a military motorcycle caught up with the moving plane. From inside the shaking cockpit, James fired a precise burst through the open door, dropping the rider. But the pilot fought back with desperate strength. Locked in a brutal grapple, both men crashed through the open cockpit door, tumbling violently out onto the hard, frozen tarmac as the pilotless plane kept rolling, soaring off the edge of the sheer cliff into the empty abyss below. James didn't waste a heartbeat. He scrambled up, sprinted to the idling military motorcycle, and pinned the throttle. The plane cleared the tarmac, soaring into the empty air over the cliff's edge. James pushed the motorcycle to its absolute limit, rocketed off the lip of the abyss, and abandoned the bike mid-air. He fell like a stone through the frozen sky, diving headfirst into a vertical plunge toward the tumbling cockpit. Muscles strained against gravity as he wrestled the door open, threw himself inside, and pulled the nose up, just as the aircraft soared back into view over the ridge, leaving Archangel to vanish in a massive, roaring fireball behind him.